Good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Lazarov, board member of the Liu Shiming Art Foundation. It's truly an honor to welcome you to our Artist Talk for People Every Day, an exhibition that brings together the work of Hank Willis Thomas and Liu Shiming, two artists whose work reflects their profound thoughts about human form, caregiving figures, and community as sites of power, memory, and social transformation. Our People Everyday exhibition marks the very first time Liu Shiming's work has been paired with a contemporary sculptor. Our panelists tonight are the artist Hank Willis Thomas, Emann Odufu, and Andrew Serwer will be moderating our conversation. Hank Willis Thomas is a conceptual artist based in New York, in Brooklyn. He is known for incorporating recognizable symbols and imagery from American pop culture into his work to explore themes of identity, history, consumerism, and the media. Hank received his BFA from NYU and his MA MFA from the California College of the Arts, San Francisco. He holds multiple honorary doctorates, and his work is included in the permanent collections in the museums and galleries around the globe, including the Museum of Modern Art and the Guggenheim Museum, among many more. His upcoming exhibition at Jack Shaman Gallery will open in September at their Tribeca location. Emann Odufu is an independent art and culture critic, filmmaker, and curator hailing from Newark, New Jersey. Emann is best known for his work that explores the genre of Afrofuturism within Black cinema. Through his own creative work, Emann has spoken at prestigious institutions including Harvard University, Yale, Dartmouth, NYU, and the British Film Institute, among others. His work and his writing have been featured by prominent media outlets, including the New York Times, Huffington Post, Document Journal, and the Brooklyn Rail. Emann has curated shows at the National Arts Club, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Connecticut, the Layla Hella Gallery, and he curated the exhibition we're here to discuss tonight, People Every Day. Andrew Serwer, a fellow board member of the Liu Shiming Art Foundation, is editor-at-large at Barron's, covering a wide range of financial topics and people. Prior to Barron's, he led Yahoo Finance's editorial team for nearly 8 years, and before that, Andy spent 29 years with Fortune magazine, becoming the magazine's editor-in-chief. Andy was also the business news anchor of CNN's American Morning from 2000 to 2006. But before I turn things over to our panel, I'd like to briefly share a bit more about the Liu Shiming Foundation. Established in 2021, our foundation's mission has two key pillars inspired by Liu Shiming's lifelong dedication to art and education. Our first is to preserve and promote the legacy of Liu Shiming, a remarkable and sensitive artist who lived and taught in China from 1926 to 2010. We achieved this by hosting exhibitions here at our New York gallery, organizing traveling shows of Liu Shiming's work across the US and internationally, and by sponsoring research into his art and life. Our foundation's second pillar is dedicated to championing future generations of artists. We do this, as you just saw in the video, by establishing scholarships at universities worldwide, providing grants to emerging international artists, and through our new Distinguished Educator Award, which we launched this spring. To date, we've collaborated with over 40 universities and art institutions across 5 continents to support emerging artists by creating Liu Shiming scholarship funds ranging from London's Royal College of Art to UCLA and the University of Nairobi. Connecting those pillars of the foundation's mission is our public programming, which encompasses film screenings and concerts that resonate thematically with our exhibitions, hands-on workshops for families, and gallery talks and panels, including this one tonight. If you haven't yet had a chance to visit the exhibition, People Every Day will be open on the 5th floor for about a half an hour after this panel ends. We're absolutely thrilled to have Hank, Emann, and Andy with us this evening. Please welcome them as I hand it over to Andy.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Emann, you good?
Yeah, I was turning my phone on.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure I didn't get a phone call. Yeah.
Well, it's so great to have you two guys here, and I just want to say how grateful we are to you, Hank, and to Emann for being here this evening, and in particular, we're grateful to you, Hank, for exhibiting your work here with Liu Shiming, and it's just fascinating seeing the work together. You know, being somewhat familiar with your work puts it in a whole new life, and certainly the same is true with Liu Shiming. I know his work so well, but seeing it juxtaposed or complemented by your work, it puts it in a whole nother perspective. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be a part of it.
Well, before we begin a little bit more, I just want to thank this tremendous staff here at the Liu Shiming Gallery and Art Foundation, and in particular Ashley. It's her birthday. Happy birthday, Ashley. She's working tonight on her birthday, right? That's awesome. So you guys working together is really interesting. Maybe that's a good starting point. Can you talk a little bit about your collaboration, how you two met, how far back does it go, and how deep is it? Hank, do you want to start, or?
I think I can start. Yeah, I mean, okay. I think the way it's actually really interesting how how much of a full circle moment this is. Like, I feel like I first started learning about Hank through a book. I read a book called The Colorization of America by Jeff Chang, and it was around 2014. I can't remember exactly when it came out, but basically it was a very instrumental book in just the formation of me understanding art and politics and culture and how everything kind of is interconnected. And so in this book, I read a chapter that focused on Hank and a couple of other artists, but Hank really stood out to me. And from there, I was on, I think, NYFA. I think I saw a posting for an internship at Hank Willis, after I had read this book, and was like, oh, this guy's so cool. And I applied and got the gig, and was in the studio in, I think, 2015, 16, and ended up being able to tour one of his public art projects, In Search of the Truth, which is, you guys don't know, it's kind of funny, doing the spiel again. It's like an inflatable speech bubble whereby you can go inside and you answer what the truth is to you. And we took it around the country in 2016, so it was the year of a presidential election. It was the first Donald Trump election, and kind of got from on the ground what people were feeling about politics, but about everything. And kind of through that process, I really got to just understand Hank's practice in a very intimate way, working not only with Hank, but with his close team that he creates all of the work with, and kind of just and for me it was great. It was I wanted to understand the art world, and I'm in the studio of this world-renowned artist, and kind of even through the tour being able to see the reach of the national infrastructure of the art world. So but yeah, I mean, so basically through that, I've just been connected with him since then, and it's been an amazing journey that's led to this very moment.
So what year was that again?
2016 is when we took the tour around the U.S.
9 years or so. So the guy cold calls you, basically?
Yeah. I mean, Emann is a man of many talents and a lot of curiosity, and is really always wanting to engage on a deeper level with people. And the Truth Booth was a perfect opportunity to kind of get to know strangers, because you are actually just inviting total strangers to come in and be vulnerable with you. And they took it to 35 different cities. I only got to go to a few that year because we were launching another project called Four Freedoms at the time. But since then, we've kind of always stayed in touch, but then there's been you interviewed me for Office Magazine, and I think had a conversation, at least one public conversation before, and have you curated my work and anything else?
Yeah, so it was we did some unbranded works. I work in advertising also. We brought some of the unbranded works into an advertising office, just kind of to kind of sharpen that narrative around, just kind of using his work as a tool to have people in advertising think differently about the work that they create.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to ask you, Hank, a little bit about your work, and of course in conjunction with Liu Shiming. Your work speaks to modernity, but also to the past. And so I'm curious how you see your art evolving and how it speaks to the past, but also pushing things forward, and maybe the degree to which you see that in Liu Shiming's work.
Well, I think I'll start with Liu Shiming's work. One of the things that I think is really profound about many of his works is while they are decades old, they can be made, could have been made yesterday. You know, a lot of the figures and the situations that people find themselves in are still situations that people are in now, and the sensitivity, even the ambition in some of the work, I still see, and it still feels relevant and resonant. I come from a different background as a photographer and as an American, many other things, and I like Liu Shiming. I spend a lot of my time watching people live their lives and kind of been profoundly influenced by the mundane things that people do day to day. And I've always been interested in framing and context and how, depending on where you stand, it affects what you see. And a lot of the work that you'll see downstairs of mine are collages that are based off of everyday people trying to change society through nonviolent civil action. And in a moment like now, where nonviolent civic action is pretty charged, it's really causing me to really reflect on kind of the urgency of the work.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that a little bit, because a lot of people say, well, this artist is a political activist, this one isn't. What do you consider yourself, or is it even not really binary like that? Is it a spectrum and one finds oneself on a certain place there?
I think all art is political, just because of the way that it functions in Western society as currency in some ways, and the way that it can be preserved in the space that it holds. If all art weren't political, cultural institutions wouldn't be seen as a threat so much as they are apparently to the current administration. And so in that way, it doesn't matter if someone's doing abstraction. For many people, find abstraction to be threatening because they don't get it. And it's provocative for that reason, because it's asking you to relate to what you know with your heart rather than in your mind. That would be my answer to that.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Emann?
About the political, like, is all art political? I mean, I would say that this show specifically, I wouldn't say that it's a political show, but I would say that it's maybe a quiet resistance, and also there's like a theme of that in Liu Shiming's work as well. This idea of quietly resisting, and almost like a poetic resistance, as opposed to I feel like a lot of political art is like, it almost like beats you over the head with the message, whereby this is kind of more abstract in that it's like I guess there's like, it's anchored in the idea that there's a shared humanity of all people, but past that, it's open-ended. And I think that is why it's also kind of poetic and kind of a poetic resistance. And it's political, but it's more implied than explicit.
Let me follow up a little bit and ask you about actually curating the show. I mean, how do you do it? Where do you start? You got these works here, those works there, put them all together. What happens? Tell us about the process.
I think my brain just tends to naturally just form connections between things. The way that I came up with the idea for the concept of the show was when I came to kind of visit the foundation and learn about Liu's work and just learn about the foundation. There's like the reoccurring word, like the word that just stuck out was everyday people, and it was just like constantly they're like, oh, Liu Shiming's work represents everyday people, and it probably was said maybe 4 or 5 times, and it kind of just like stuck in my head. And then initially it really connected me to the song by Sly and the Family Stone, Everyday People.
And Sly Stone passed away.
Yeah, he recently just passed away, which is crazy that it kind of, but like that was, I was like, while I'm was trying to conceptualize the show, I'm playing that song all the time. I'm playing the Arrested Development version of it, which is samples that song and echoes the same chorus, and is still a call for unity and the humanity of all people, no matter class or race or whatever. And I thought that was a very important message in the present moment. And so I think. Also talking with Hank as well, he really pushed for the to kind of make it, to use people every day, kind of make it a little bit more modern, and I think that it works really well. And I thought it was I thought it was a great tie between Hank's work and Liu's work. Just the idea of just the human condition being ever present in both of their practices.
Yeah. And Hank, how did you feel when you saw your work exhibited with Liu Shiming's work, the juxtaposition, the complementary nature of it perhaps, and did it change the way you thought about some of your work?
Yeah, I felt touched, to be honest. I felt emotional. I felt very, you don't often have a one-on-one kind of relationship with another artist in your work. And seeing kind of the echoes of his work in mine, and not knowing him at all, and just looking at the wrestlers, I don't think it's there, and the embrace.
Mm-hmm.
It just there is this. It speaks to this kind of invisible kind of connection of all of humanity, and the way the creators can tap into a space without even necessarily knowing it. So it felt, I was surprisingly touched, honestly, because I didn't see all of the connections until I saw Emann's work.
Yeah. Let's look at some of the connections. Just 1 second, though, before we have some slides, and maybe you guys can talk about the pieces together. It's really interesting. But you say you started off as a photographer, and so tell us about this evolution that's continuing, right, to different medium, and how do you do that, and how do you decide where to go?
Well, I studied photography at NYU and California
Upper
College
West
of the
Side
Arts.
guy, right?
Yeah.
Grew up here.
And California College of the Arts, where I went with my friend Shane over there. I was very committed to the medium of photography. But around the same time that we graduated, the iPhone came out. And my relationship to photography changed because there were now almost instantly everyone became a photographer, and I was pretty good, but I wasn't the best. And so I found the need to do different things, and I realized that I couldn't necessarily always do everything in photographs. I could actually. A lot of my photographs were conceptual, there was a way of thinking, a way of looking, and that led me to so many different mediums on this journey. But even if you look at the sculpture, the bronze sculpture, the Embrace that's over my shoulder to the right, this is it's a maquette, or I don't know, it's a small version of a 24-foot monument that's in Boston Common, which is a monument to Dr. Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. And it is the largest monument to love in our society. And it's based off a photograph of Dr. King and Mrs. King the day that he received the Nobel Peace Prize. And he is embracing her in the photograph that I looked at, and she is kind of holding his weight on her shoulders. And I really wanted to highlight that. And so I decided to kind of crop the photograph and turn it into a three-dimensional object. And so while I'm still, I'm not sculpting in the same way that Liu Shiming was, but I'm actually kind of sculpting in my mind and working through digital technology to make an image three-dimensional.
Right, yeah, you wonder if Liu Shiming had some of the tools today, would he have changed, be doing things differently, right? It's hard to know. And you mentioned the public space thing. A lot of your work is in public space, or some of it is, and so I'm wondering how you feel about that versus having your work here in a gallery. Does that change the way you think about it, the way you make it, the way you look at it?
Well, when you put work in public space, it's just, it's everyone's, and there's no, like, the best I can hope is that people might look for a second at it as they walk by it. But it's very humbling to see the work in public space, but I think the gallery is more intimate. It's a place where you don't just you don't find yourself in the Liu Shiming Foundation gallery just because you came, because you wanted to be enlightened, you wanted to be illuminated, you wanted to grow, you wanted to learn, you wanted to engage with something that someone else made. And that, to me, is a deep honor, because I recognize that to take part of your day out to go look at art isn't something that is encouraged in our society. It's really something that people feel a calling towards.
Right. And Emann, as a curator, what do you think really resonates the most when you curate a show? What do you look to accomplish? What's the goal?
I mean, I think I look at art making and even curation like as a form of like messaging in a way that obviously the artists are putting messages, putting symbols in their work, and then when you are putting their works like Liu Shiming put symbols into his work. Hank is a master of putting symbols into his work, and then when you put them together, you're kind of creating new symbols. You're creating new connections, and that is, I think, what the goal for me was. And then also to kind of have it exist abstractly, whereby it's like some people resonated with certain things. Like maybe you go in and you're like, oh, I love the Godspeed series, or you're like, oh, like this Icarus sculpture really stuck out to me. And look, there's a Greek mythology connection. Like, so different things resonate with different people, and just kind of putting it out there. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe people are just like, I just liked how it looked. And so it's like kind of making it open-ended, but also kind of guiding, like kind of creating layers for people who are interested in different things. So that's kind of what I think my goal as a curator is. Yeah.
Do you guys want to look at some of the pairings that we have of Hank, of your work with Liu Shiming's? Let's do it. Okay, we've got 3 pairings here. It's like wine, but it's a little different.
First, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for taking time to come out. And this is such a beautiful space. It's so.
Thank you to all these guys.
And so thank you all for all the work that you did to make this moment a moment.
So, tell us about this, Hank, or maybe Emann, and how it goes with or doesn't go with these other works. Who wants to start? You want to start, Hank? He starts, the curator. Mr. Curator.
Okay,
Over to
no problem. So, I mean, Archimedean Solid, it is a map. And basically, it's a map of the world, and obviously the maps of our world kind of show our man-made borders, our created borders. And basically, Measuring Land is one of Liu's kind of breakout pieces. It was kind of very early in his career, and I think the idea of measuring land is that's literally how you make maps. You're measuring land and you're putting them together. And I thought, the idea of kind of pairing these two together kind of spoke to our modern society, and just the way that borders and land and lines and natural borders as well, rivers, mountains, how these things really affect our lives, and also are very present in the current moment in terms of the political situation here and abroad as well.
And what medium is that you said?
Say that again?
What medium is that? What is it? What is it made out of?
This is a retroreflective collage. So this piece is like much of the work downstairs, has 2 different modes of viewing. You can view it under natural conditions and it'll look like this, but if you hit it with a flash or use a flashlight, you'll notice that it's actually a collage made of hundreds of different photographs, and all photographs from all over the world, actually, but of mostly people in nonviolent civic action events. The shape is something that became popularized by Buckminster Fuller. It was called the Dymaxion, and it was part of. He was really fascinated with this idea of technology being used to measure the Earth accurately, the surface of the Earth, and there was this concept of the polyhedra, these 13 shaped, triangular shaped forms that can actually be used to kind of, basically, we think of the world as a sphere, but it's actually, I think, more like a potato, apparently.
Unpeel it.
But when we see maps, all maps are distortions, right? There's
Yes.
different projections. The Mercator projection, the one that we're most used to, was designed by Northern Europeans who wanted Western and Northern Europe to be bigger because that's where they went, and therefore everyone else got smaller, and set the stage for how we view importance in the world. And this was an attempt to kind of reimagine like a more democratized map of the world. And so the thought of this piece of measuring land is another, this is Liu Shiming actually also thinking about how people make space and make reality through this kind of counting of measuring of space.
Yeah, I didn't know we were going to go to Buckminster Fuller. Wow. The father of the geodesic dome, if you own, right? Yeah, I think got some people knowing that one. That is very, very cool. And tell us about, you told me earlier about how you discovered this sort of, I guess, reflective property that you wanted to get into, right?
Yeah, so did everyone get to see the show, maybe? So as
There's
I mentioned,
still time. Go down there.
The two-dimensional works of mine that are there are all collages, and they are made of this material called retroreflective vinyl, which is material that we actually interact with every day for wayfinding. It's the material that's on one-way signs or street signs, and the way that those signs work at nighttime is they are only illuminated when the headlights of a car that you're in are pointed towards them. So someone could be on the street, they wouldn't know that this is glowing. And I was really interested in using a wayfinding material like this to actually learn about and speak about history. And because as we have seen, history can get pretty distorted, and maybe it always is distorted, but like this idea of using this kind of shining a light on specific things might give us a little bit of an awakening about a certain moment or a certain event. And so I'm like really kind of in this topography of images and wanting to kind of blend the past, the present, and this sensibility of knowing you can't see it all, but also trying to see a little bit deeper.
And you saw it in a sign shop or something you walked into?
Yeah, I saw it in a sign shop, and I realized that if I could, let's say, there's green material there, I was like, if I could print green ink on top of a green vinyl, it'll become invisible. If I print blue ink on top of blue vinyl, it becomes visible. And I just love this idea of working with the invisible.
Do you find you have to prompt yourself to have these epiphanies, right? Like, what are you reading to like do this so that you see that, you come up with the next idea?
That's a good question.
That's what I'm trying to ask them.
If I could prompt myself, I'd probably be a lot happier.
Right, yeah, right? It's always like that. Like
Yeah.
you sit there sometimes and go, I've got to come up with the next thing. It's like pressure on yourself, right?
Yeah.
All right, we'll let that one go.
The artist, James Baldwin said the artists struggle for their integrity must be considered as the struggle that's universal and daily for all human beings to get to become human beings. And there's this way in which I'm trying to do in my work is trying to be the best version of myself I can be. And most of the time I'm failing.
Mm.
And that is something that artists are very comfortable with. It never gets easy, but we're very comfortable with this failing, and it's often failing in public, right? And so when I think about prompting myself, it seems like sometimes you just gotta And maybe it is prompting. Maybe that's just the getting up and trying again.
Yeah, don't be so hard on yourself, right? I mean, if you look at it that way, that's challenging, but right?
How many artists here, raise your hands, how many are not hard on yourselves? Oh, okay.
So it comes with the territory. So
Some hands with that, like.
I didn't go into that field of work. My line of work has a lot of failure too. All right, you want to look? Yes. Never. I'm impressed that you can. James Baldwin quotes, by the way, are hard to remember because he goes.
Yeah.
Right. And like the first
Stream of consciousness.
the first part is easy, and then it just keeps going. So I'm impressed with that. You want to talk about the next one?
Sure.
Okay. All right, this you talked about the embrace a little bit, but you also have the two Liu Shiming pieces that go with it, or that you put with it.
I feel like I'll start it off because I feel like Hank does a good way of kind of concluding it with his insight. So I initially, one of the first through lines that I found as the curator of the show was kind of between both the monumental sculptures, Embrace and Liu Shiming's Cutting Through Mountains to Bring in Water. I think specifically in both pieces, they're Hank and Liu are both kind of subverting the, I guess, aesthetic norms of monumental sculpture. As you know, monumental sculpture has been, for the most part, used to enhance the views of the state, of leaders, and stuff like that. But I think there's a subversion that is also happening aesthetically. Like when Liu Shiming was coming up with Cutting Through Mountains to Bring in Water, he was in the academy of in Beijing, and at the time it was kind of frowned upon bringing landscapes into big sculptures. And so it was basically it was kind of like the Rodin's The Thinker, where you have the guy that's just thinking and it's just his body and the gesture. And so basically he decided to bring in the mountains, and that kind of was a subversion of the aesthetic notions of that time. And I think kind of what Hank said earlier about him zooming into just a hug, and it kind of takes a sculpture which could be just very well just a sculpture of two important people hugging, right? But him kind of zooming in on the hug, it kind of makes it kind of a universal thing. As you said, it's the biggest monument to love, not you know what I'm saying? And I think that is obviously it is about Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King, but it is also about this universal thing that we all connect to, which also connects to people every day, being all these sculptures of these things that no matter where you're from, no matter what time you're no matter how old you can connect to seeing somebody on a bicycle. You can connect to these very everyday things, and so that's kind of a connection I saw between the Embrace and Cutting Through Mountains to Bring in Water. Is just this subversion of the aesthetic norms of monumental sculpture.
Yeah, and also just graphically, looking at the wrestling and the Embrace, they're very much echoing one another as these bronze sculptures are made decades apart. And I wasn't aware of Liu Shiming's sculpture when I made this work, but I can't help but to see that these forms are very much connected. And thinking about, there are other sculptures of his, but when you mentioned The Thinker, there's also, I see in the wrestlers some kind of relationship or abstraction of that form. And so this idea of kind of this intimacy that happens between people, but being rendered in bronze and this cold metal, is something that is kind of, it's a unique we have to suspend our disbelief to actually find the intimacy in this kind of cold material. And a lot of my ambition in the sculptures is to actually try to transcend the material to make something that actually calls us together.
Yeah, looking at those two pieces, I mean, it really is remarkable, the resemblance, and it really sort of maybe speaks to the communal subconscious, like a Jungian thing where, across different cultures like the Mayan pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids, and neither culture knew what they were doing, supposedly, or maybe they did, depending on what your belief system is. But that there are these archetypes that transcend all of us, that speak to all of us that way. And I don't really know what Liu Shiming had in mind with the wrestling, really, other than maybe just the form, right?
I mean, I think also what's really interesting is like the embrace and wrestling, they're almost like two opposite emotions, like emotional states.
Right.
So like, you know, obviously
Yes.
embrace is love and wrestling is like friction, or like, I think it can be playful, you know, you can be playful. Like I feel like wrestling is something whereby people are choosing to engage in this act of friction or resistance, but it's still a resistance. And I think that it's interesting that they're like the forms are similar, but the emotional element is completely opposite almost.
Yeah. Do you look at artists prior to yourself, contemporary artists as well, but do you go back and look at ancient art for inspiration, or postmodern art, or do you just try to like tune out and stay inside yourself?
No, I love looking at history because you get to time travel. And if I can take something historical, like you saw with the Dymaxion, and bring it to the present, it feels like not only did I time travel, I actually got to bring an artifact from the past back with me.
Right. And also sort of on the other side are things, obviously current events, inspiring you as well. Are there things today that are inspiring you, or maybe uninspiring you? I guess there's another way of asking it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm inspired by all of the people who are going out in public to have their voices heard, to stand up for democracy and human rights in the face of what appears to be a growing brutality in the mindset, at least, of our caretakers. That really is inspiring to me. I also have a lot of anxiety and distress about how much time we spend together how much time we spend together through corporate devices. Because when we are spending time together through a corporate device, we're not actually able to engage. It has the facade of engagement, but really it's programming. Literally, it's programming as a tool for engagement, and most of us don't even understand the code, and
right.
So we don't even understand the context in which we're living. And I spend most of my life with my best friend, and so I think what's so touching to me for all of you all to be here is that like you had to like put your phones down. And maybe even listen to other people, and like that is something that is increasingly rare. So I'm inspired by the people here.
Maybe people really crave that experience after spending 12 hours just staring at the screen, right? It becomes that much more valuable. Have you considered or done any work that speaks to either this public expression that people are going out and showing, or B, this addiction that we have to this silicon?
I have considered it a lot, but then I looked something up and forgot.
Right.
It's like, that would be really good. Wait, let me just write that down, then I'm going to Google, and then it's done.
In a notes mode. Well, yeah, or now you can just do a voice prompt into software that creates images with AI. Have you started using AI?
I have. I have not really made anything that I think is so significant that it needs to be physically out in the world, but and the technology changes and improves so quickly that it's almost like dated the moment you make something. So that's but yeah, How about you, Emann?
What's your
just
take?
in advertising?
I think the conversations around AI are very interesting. I mean, I feel like, I definitely use it. It helps me to make sense of my life better. It's almost like, in a weird way, it's like, it's almost like at times it can be my friend, like you said, or my therapist, or and there is like I guess like that is kind of scary, and when you think about like all the things that are separating us as human beings naturally without that, and that being like an added thing. So yeah, I mean I feel that anxiety. Also think that in a weird way, potentially, I mean, this is like kind of maybe out there, but I think that like potentially I'm also into futurism, but the idea of AI kind of freeing humans from labor so that we can actually focus on the larger things like that like kind of affect our planet. Because now we're not focused on labor. We have a robot that does our job for us and brings in a salary, and we can just, pontificate about the world and making it a better place. Like, I don't know. That's something that I think about sometimes, but I mean, I might just be like, that might be me over, I don't know, me kind of getting too lost in my imagination. And then there may be actual, I mean, it's probably more realistic that we need to have anxiety around it.
Yeah, it seems like the dystopian view of AI is a little stronger than the utopian view, right? Yeah, I was looking at this program Midjourney the other night, and where you can just type in things and images come up, and then you can refine it by refining the queries. So it's all kind of trippy like
last
that.
week I was at a conference, and I don't remember the name, but Tesla premiered its robot.
Yeah, a robo vehicle or
like
robot.
A humanoid robot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what could possibly go wrong there?
Yeah, and it walked out and started telling jokes and was like doing some rudimentary dance moves but not plugged into anything. And it was like, yeah, they said they started working on it last year, and like it's already here, and so next year they're apparently going to be trying to ship these robots into our lives.
I'm surprised they weren't in the parade the other day.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about. Maybe they were. You couldn't
The dogs
tell.
were.
Who could tell? All right, we have one more of these pairings to talk about.
Emann.
Okay, I can jump
It's your
start
work,
it.
sir.
Yeah, for sure.
It's his
for
work,
sure.
but it's your work too, if you know what I mean, right?
All right, so I guess first we see Liu Shiming Silk Road. I don't know how many of you guys are history buffs and familiar with Silk Road. Basically, it's existed as a trade route throughout classical times up until very recent, whereby kind of goods, culture, ideas were transported back and forth between the West and the East. So the from the Greek civilization, maybe even before that onward. I mean, I guess maybe the Egyptian civilization started kind of engaging with the East and kind of trading things back and forth. And to me, I thought I saw that idea of the Silk Road, this kind of like metaphorical cross-cultural exchange being seen in Icarus in the Moonlight and Icarus in the Sunlight, as well as Liu Shiming's Greek mythology. Obviously, Hank comes from an American background, but is still looking at Greek mythology as a theme that he is exploring in his artworks, and the same with Liu Shiming with his Greek mythology center. And I thought that was interesting that there was this connection in Greek mythology between these two artists that are creating from cultures that are very separate from Greece and that period of time. And so that was, I guess, the connection between all three of the works for me.
Four, actually, because these are, as you mentioned, the two works in the middle are Icarus in the Moonlight and Icarus in the Sunlight. And the silhouettes, the one that's blue here, is a silhouette from a book called The Blacker the Berry, the Sweeter the Juice by Wallace Thurman. But the figure was created by brain freeze. Aaron Douglas, who was a Harlem Renaissance illustrator, artist, painter, one of the most prolific of that time. And around the same time that he was making work, Henri Matisse went to Harlem and was influenced by the artists making work in Harlem, and it really changed the way that he was making a lot of his work. And so in his jazz series, he is actually referencing African American history and culture, but also some of the aesthetics that he learned on his journeys to the United States, and especially in Harlem. And so the figure that's read there is depicted as white in the jazz series, but it's called Icarus, and there's this flame in his heart. And so what's unique, or what I love about these sculptures, is that when you see it from one side, you can just see Aaron Douglas, or just see Matisse. You see it from another side, you see the other. And then there's these other angles where they kind of blend. Mm-hmm. And so again, this kind of juxtaposition and this kind of multi-viewing experience that can be absolute angle to that angle is something that I'm really kind of entranced by.
And the moonlight and the sunlight and the red and the blue? And the red you talked about from the heart?
The one that's red is red and black, and the one that's blue, I think, is red and blue.
Okay.
And I just wanted to like make these contrasts. I was also thinking about Keith Haring.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. That's a lot of different artists all wrapped up in a couple pieces, right?
Yeah. But again, I love that there's this connection that Emann brought out between two non-Greek artists influenced by this thing, and I'm kind of channeling it through like these other artists. So there's like this right. Again, this sense of time travel.
Yeah, and we did get to the antiquities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Liu Shiming once said that his greatest wish were for viewers to have a silent dialogue with his works, and I think you mentioned that dialoguing with his works expanded your own understanding of your own creative process, Hank. What can you elaborate on that? What does that mean exactly?
Well, when we're in the studio, most of the times we're making things, or even in the process of making things, we're not thinking that it's going to last forever, or even last much longer than, like, it's like to think about an artist who worked for as long as Liu Shiming did. Mm-hmm. I think the last thing he would have ever imagined is that there would be a foundation in his name with his work on view in the United States, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing I could imagine is that the work that I am making would be on view in, I don't know, Kazakhstan in 50 years, you know? Mm-hmm. And so there's this idea of like what we're making is got a life of its own. And that is something that should be, once the work is completed, that we have to let go of it and allow it to live its life.
Right. We are going to go to questions from the audience. I know you guys have a lot of questions stored up. Prompted you. I'll get to you one second. One last question, and then I'll come over to you. No, that's fine. And the question for you, Emann, is about the poetic quality, because in Chinese artistic tradition, poetic quality is sort of the highest form, and that was Liu Shiming's artistic pursuit. What do you see as the poetic quality of both Hank's work and Liu Shiming's work?
I think I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but that both of these guys are masters of imbuing like symbolism into their works. And you know, I think that the poetic quality of the show, I think it comes from the multiple meanings that anything could kind of have when you look at it. Like, for example, I'll give an example. Like the Godspeed series, like there's a pairing downstairs whereby it's like the Godspeed series, which is like kind of like images of water that use Hank's retroreflective technique and reveal images underneath, and then there's like Liu Shiming's boat sculptures. And you know, I think when I look at the Godspeed series, I mean, obviously it could physically represent water or rivers, but also I think it could represent, you know, the flow of life, the ebb and flow of being a human. But then when I look at like you know, Liu Shiming's boat sculptures, I think of, you know, like fresh off the boat, like whereby it's like immigration and kind of boats as these vessels of passage between one land to another land, you know. And then also when I see the the Godspeed series, and kind of the way that the flash illuminates photos of people, like the layers underneath the water. I think of the transatlantic passage and Africans who were brought into North America, and the ones that were kind of thrown overboard and exist in that like almost like that line from Black Panther where he's like, oh, I do it for those people. And so I think of all these things are happening simultaneously, and I think that is poetry. The fact that you can look at something and take so many different meanings from it. I think also specifically the way that both Hank and Liu are kind of really grappling with the idea that like being a human is very much connected to the environments that we reside in, right? And the kind of the usage of nature, of air, of birds, and how it means more than just a bird. It can mean your aspirations. And I think specifically like the pairing of the birds in the Emergence series with Icarus in the moonlight, Icarus in the sunlight. It's almost for me, the bird also represents like going for like kind of like the ambition of human society to cut through mountains to bring water, right? And then on Icarus and Moonlight also kind of shows the pitfalls of too much ambition, and especially on the world stage, and creating too many borders, creating too many lines, and what that could, how that can affect our society and create problems for everyday people. So so there's poetry because there's multiple meanings that can be taken from anything. It's more of an abstract. It's not really like we're not leading anybody to a direct message. It's more of an abstract way of kind of just understanding human existence.
2 quick last questions before we go to the audience. Did you know you wanted to be a curator when you were growing up?
No. I mean, I think over time it revealed itself. At first, I wanted to be a basketball player, which also is why I connected to Hank's work, because he has a lot of work that deals with basketball and the way that how Black identity, especially Black male identity, is shaped by it. And I think that was kind of like my into kind of delving deeper into myself, but also into art and Black art and all that stuff like that. Yeah.
And what about you? You said, Hank, that you wanted to study photography when you were young. Did you want to be an artist, a little boy?
No. My mother is an artist and art historian, and all of her friends were broke. And it was a really hard life to watch people, and it still is. And so I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then it's all I knew.
You ended up there anyway, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to flash back to the beginning screen and go over to you. I have to play like Phil Donahue for people who remember who he was, and bring the mic over to
Jerry
you.
Springer.
Well, I'm not going there. Hi, what's your question? Hi.
I feel like you need game show music for that. Hello, my name is Morgan. I consider myself an artist activist, and I'm sure you're getting this question a lot right now, but I'm really curious about the role of artists in this political climate right now. I'm really struck by what you said earlier about that quiet resistance and leaning into our collective humanity. And I'm holding on to that. And I'm also holding on to the fact that artists are needed now more than ever for that hard-hitting work. So I guess from a personal and bird's eye view perspective, where do you see our role now into the future for both of you? Thank you.
I mean, all right, I'll start it off. I think that right now, specifically, there is a moment whereby I think art can bridge gaps, bridge the divides. I think I think one thing that's interesting to me about art is, and kind of also I've thought of this about music as well, but that it's kind of a language that you don't have to speak I feel like you can speak Chinese, but you can still speak the language. You might not speak Chinese, but you speak the language of art. So I don't know. I might not have been able to have a direct conversation with Liu Shiming. I don't know if he spoke English or not, but I could understand what he's saying through his artwork. And I think art as almost as a tool of being able to make people relate to things that may seem foreign to them at first does a lot to do that. And I think also like something that Hank was saying earlier, art is inherently political. It's like, so you don't have you don't necessarily have to there's so many different ways to do the same thing. And also I feel like when you talk about any kind of movement, there's so many different roles that people play. certain people are supposed to be like there's space for everything that exists, and I think it all serves its role, or almost like if it's a big puzzle, everything plays its piece within the larger puzzle. And so I think that there's obviously very in your face and important ways to rage against what's going on that people aren't happy with, and there's other ways to do it. Everybody's personality is not the same. There's so many ways that you can put forth your opinion into the world.
Yeah. So, and I think this idea of maintaining your individuality is important as an artist. I think we're unlike the military. Our way of being effective in this society isn't through uniformity. It's also not through being reactive. I think if you are gifted with the talents of graphic design or marketing and advertising, I think there's a role because those mediums are often really needing to be responsive and directive. But I always like to say that good art asks questions, where good design answers them, and the quality of the questions impacts the quality of the answers. And if we're so busy trying to find something to say rather than trying to find the best questions to ask and the best places to ask those questions, I think we'll miss out, because as you've seen, the news cycle changes so quickly, and we can get, and a lot of times what we're making takes time. It takes months, takes days, takes years, takes decades. And so if we're making something that's about right now, how can it serve the future? And all art should be made in service of the future. That's one thing I do believe, because life doesn't happen in the now. Life is always happening in the future, and the meaning of the work, as we've seen with a lot of the work downstairs, will change with the times. And so I think it's important to imbue your own individuality into what you're doing, and just keep doing whatever it is you are doing, in spite of all of the other things. And so, you think about artists that were working during World War II, like Matisse, that because of they kept working is why we have some of these objects and artifacts. So why would we, not do it if we had the opportunity to?
We maybe have time for one or two more questions. This gentleman back here.
Thanks. It's a question for Hank. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm just curious how difficult it is to stay in the physical world with creating art today, because digital is so much more flexible and iterative. The physical world is so much more limited, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The market, both financial and attention-wise, is moving towards digital, and so is it more difficult for you do you feel yourself being pulled into the digital space, or do you have to?
I mean, I think I live in a digital space.
Right.
The question is, can I make in a digital space? And that's not something that I feel that I've been able to do very well. And it's partially because the digital space is not democratized. It is commercialized, and while the fine art market is commercialized, it's something I can, as elusive as it is, I can actually understand it. Whereas, as I said, with the digital realm, you're only as good as your last post, right? We're not, and what platform are you using? And there's this kind of infinite quest for relevancy that so many of us find ourselves in, that doesn't, to me, serve the deeper work. So I've seen epic, amazing works of art, and then I just scroll up, and now I'm laughing at a dog. So I mean, I think it is the shell to crack, and it will get cracked. But I also don't. Yeah, this life is a journey for all of us, and so just go with the flow.
One more question, maybe? Yes. You guys, one question or two questions? Is it the same question? Here.
Hi, this is for Hank. You mentioned this in your first answer, but you said that art is asking questions, and I'm wondering, with any new works that you're working on, what questions are you asking in service of the future?
That is the question. I mean, one of the things I'm really asking myself is how much can, with however much has changed, where I'm so invested and curious about 20th century and the lens of photography in 20th century, like what is the value of an image in the age of image generation? Like what is there any integrity in like using historical images or historical objects or talking about history when history was always made up? It was always his story. Usually it was a he who was telling it. And I've always been more interested in our story. But in this moment when we can't tell the difference between his story, our story, or their story, and you can make images that look like they happened then, now. So my question, I have a bunch of questions about the state of reality, and how it serves us. Like how much does it serve us to look at the past as a marker when the traditions that we are used to are evaporating? And is that romantic? Is it nostalgic, or is it pertinent or necessary? These are questions that I'm asking myself all the time.
All right, we're going to have to end the program on that note, so please join me in thanking. Great conversation with you guys. Whoa,
Thank you.
Careful there. Thank you so much. Please go down to the 5th floor and enjoy the work.